March 16th, 1983. This is Joe Todd, an interview with Emma Louise Ray Love.
Oklahoma Territory.
Okay.
January 26, 1899.
At Bliss, Oklahoma Territory.
Bliss.
What's that near?
I don't know.
Well, it's in Kay County, in the Ponca Reservation.
It's not too far from Ponca City, I don't think.
Hmm. Who was your father?
Robert Townsend Ray.
And was he from Oklahoma Territory? Was he born in Oklahoma?
No, he was born in Pennsylvania.
And who is your mother?
Ida Frances Ray. Ida Frances Regner.
How do you spell that?
Regnier.
And was she from Pennsylvania also?
No, she was from Kansas. They were from Ohio originally and then moved to Kansas.
What kind of work did your father do?
He was in real estate.
When did your parents come to Oklahoma Territory?
That's what I don't know. In the 1800s sometime. 1800s. I guess I could have found that out.
Oh, that's okay. What about your grandparents? Did you know them?
Yes. My grandfather came from France.
On your mother's side?
On my mother's side. And my grandmother came from Germany. And she was quite a lady.
What's your grandfather's name from France?
Eugene Alexander Regner. Eugene Alexander Regner.
How did he pronounce his last name?
Regnier.
Now, is that the French pronunciation?
Well,
Regner?
I think they said Regnier part of the time, but everybody pronounced it Regner.
Did he ever talk about his childhood in France?
No, not that I know of. I mean, he didn't to me, but he was quite an educated person, and he told me a lot about history and things like that, and told me a lot about the customs and all in France. But he'd been back and forth, I think 16 times after he came here.
Remember any specific stories that he told you?
Well, not about his trips or France so much, but he was real careful about the way I dressed and things like that, and the way I...
How did he make sure, how were you dressed? You said that he was careful about how you dressed?
Yes. You know how kids will be when they get into this teenage. They want to put on things and dress and everything. And he said, get dressed and then come and let me see you and go back and take half of it off. I was never supposed to wear a lot of jewelry or a lot of, it was supposed to be just so. He did live with us. He and grandmother was with us some, and she was real prissy lady too.
And she was from Germany?
Yes.
Did she talk about...
Well, I think they met in Alsace-Lorraine. But no, I never did. I never, as a child, I guess I wasn't curious about about their childhood. However, I think grandmother's parents came to Ohio when they were just children. There were 6 of the girls, I believe there were 6 girls and no boys. And their grandfather, their father, had a jewelry store. That's what he did. He dealt in fine gems and jewelry. And those girls, one of them was so homesick. She was older than grandmother, I think, and she was so homesick that she died. They thought she might have had diabetes or something, you know. But anyway, they thought she just was so homesick that she died. But they never did tell me. I never was curious about it. I think I would be now.
What about your grandparents on your father's side?
Oh, they came. I'd have to get my BAR papers. My father's people came in the 1600s to the United States, and they had quite a bit of property in Pennsylvania. We went back there in the 50s, and I got to see some of it, you know. Just, goodness, it's amazing. And see some of the old homes. And they were both from England, I believe it was England.
Yeah. Any of your ancestors on your father's side of the Revolutionary War?
Oh, yes. Yeah, I have 7 proven ancestors in the Revolutionary War. My father's side, of course, my mother's people didn't come over here in time to have. But grandfather, Regner, was in the Civil War, and he was pretty proud of that. And I've been told, and I think I have a picture. I have a picture of his grave, and he was in the artillery, and his cannon is there by his grave over here in Oklahoma.
What part of Oklahoma?
Well, they lived at Pahuska and around there. There's a big, I wish I've put these things away, and that's one thing I've been digging around for. There's big write-ups about my grandfather, what all he had done, and what all he'd helped build bridges and things in Oklahoma.
This your grandfather, Regner?
Yes.
Did he ever talk about the Civil War?
Oh, yes.
Remember any stories that he told you?
Well, I don't remember anything, only I think he was in Andersonville for a while, and that was terrible. That was terrible, with things he saw there. And then, too, he told about the Negroes and how they ran naked and all. The little ones never did have any clothes in the South. And, of course, he was on the northern side.
Mm-hmm.
But
your grandfather on your father's side, was he in the Civil War?
no, I don't think so. I don't know about that. I haven't gone into that. They were in the Revolutionary War. Yeah. But I don't know about the Civil War.
How old were you when you left Bliss?
When we came to when we went to Ponca City,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how old I was then. But we came out here when I was about 6.5, I guess.
To the Panhandle?
Hmm?
The Panhandle?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any memories of Ponca City?
Yes, some.
What do you remember about it?
Well, I had my first car ride there in Ponca City before we came out here. Rode in the car. It seemed awfully noisy to me.
What kind of car was it?
I don't know. It was a red one. I don't know the make. See, I wasn't very old, and I wasn't interested in the make of the car.
What did Main Street, what did downtown look like to you, or do you remember it?
Well, I don't remember it much, but it doesn't look like Ponca City does now, no. It was just, it looked more like a village. Would look now.
Remember the Indians?
Yes. My father was a go-between for the Indians. They would come to him for advice. If they'd have a quarrel among themselves, they would come to him to settle this quarrel. And I know one morning my brother and I were sitting at the table, and my dad and mother had gone outside, and we were sitting there just dawdling over our food, and there came a big knock at the door, and finally they just knocked it open. And there stood the biggest Indian I ever saw in my life, and I'd seen lots of Indians. And then there were two others with him. And I finally understood what he wanted. And I told him, my dad said, I tell you, that scared me because I was a little afraid of Indians. And I didn't need to be. They'd never done anything. And there'd been a lot of Indians at the house, too. But they always went to the office. And then I have in one of these history books, I don't know what I've done with it, but tells that my father was settled their quarrels. Mm-hmm. And they loved him. And we were, when we were in Bliss, now I started to remembering things when I was 18 months old, because I proved that to Mother and my aunt. And they'd take me to some of these festivities that they'd have, and I couldn't, and I was a child and I was sleepy, you know. And finally I asked Mother, after I was grown, I said, why did you folks go to those things? I said, I can remember the Indians going around and the dust and everything. And she said, well, they didn't turn them down all the time because it was an honor to be invited to some of those things, and they went. They took me. Didn't have a babysitter. And so they took me. Of course, my aunt and uncle lived there. They had apartments above the store. And all the years they lived together that close and had business together, I never heard one word of dissension among my people.
What kind of store did they live above?
Well, they had I have some pictures. They had a general store. And then the post office was in the store, and my father was the postmaster.
You say you have some photographs of the store?
Somewhere. I can't lay my hands on. But I do have some photographs of the store. And
how come your parents moved to the Panhandle?
well, because of my mother's health. She had emphysema, and they said she had TB. You know, a long time ago, we didn't have hospitals and things like we have now. And we didn't have the specialized medicines and all that we have now. And they said she had TB, and my father had to get her to a dry, high climate. So this part of the country was advertised and everything. Dad being in real estate, he came out to see about it. And he thought, well, this would be a good opening, I guess. And so we left our home and everything and came out here. I know it was bad for Dad. I know he was homesick a lot of times for his Pennsylvania kinfolks and friends, because I have some old letters. But he never complained. My father never complained. He just...
Do you remember the trip out here?
Yes. We came on the Golden State Limited.
What is that?
That's the train we used to have. The Golden State Limited. And it stopped at Tyrone. And our house was not completed out on the farm. And we stayed at the old Tyrone Hotel. It's still standing, but it's a wreck. I have some pictures of it. And we stayed there for several weeks.
Did your father file a claim?
Yes, that's what he did.
Mm-hmm.
But we spent as little time out there, I guess, as we could. But it was a wonderful thing for we children. We'd never been on a farm. And everything grew so beautifully. Oh, I tell you, we didn't know that potatoes grew in the ground. We didn't know all this stuff, you know. And it was a wonderland to us. And of course, my father was interested in telling us things, and the buffalo walls were still over the prairies then. You could see where they'd been, and then there was wagon marks across our land and went on. And my father told me that that's the marks that the people made that came to this part of the country. But that went to Liberal. It was people hauling supplies and things from Liberal. And it went across our land.
What kind of chores did you do on the farm as a child?
Well, I can't think much. Well, I can remember what we gave our cow melons. She ate melons just like nobody, and they grew so, oh, the melons were wonderful. And in that part of the country at that time, they shipped melons from out there in crates about so big, wooden crates with slats, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And what chores did I do? I looked after my little brother mostly. I was the oldest, and then my brother, and then we had George was a baby when we came out here, and that was the main thing I did, was look after him.
Did you start the school in Tyrone?
Yes.
What was the name of the school?
Well, they held me back so I could go, so my brother could go at the same time I did. He was the one that should have been held back. But anyway, we went to school that was not on our land, and then right away, Dad gave the northeast corner of our land for the school. Eureka School is what it was called. And that's where I first went to school. We went to this school building over on another piece of land for a while, but not, the permanent school was over on.
Mm-hmm. What was your teacher's name?
I tell you, I just don't, right now I can't recall who they were, but I know that I read everything there was to read, and the teacher kept bringing books from her home for me, and even gave me some. I still have 2 old McGuffey, one reader and one speller, I believe it is, of the real old McGuffey things. I just read everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I was reading newspapers for her. We always had the Kansas City Star. And then my father had some kind of connection with the library in Kansas City, and we got books out from there all the time. We always had plenty of books, and we were read to every evening, and we had magazines and everything in our home. We had books of our own, of course.
So reading was your favorite subject?
Mine? Everything. I was interested in everything. I know one time I told a story at school that I'd read in the paper, and she was shocked. The teacher was shocked. She said, where did you hear such? I said, I didn't hear it. I read it in the paper. She said, well, you're not old enough to be reading the paper. After that, I never let her know that I read it.
What kind of games you play in school?
Well, every kind of child plays. Hopscotch and ante-over and all those games that kids played.
Mm-hmm.
Tag, and we didn't have gymnasiums and everything to play in, you know.
Do you remember Statehood Day?
A little bit.
What was that day like? Were you in Tyrone then?
No, I think
It was 1907.
1907. We were on a farm. And I know my father was real pleased about that.
Were there any celebrations in
I
the
believe
area?
no, not that we kids went to. If there were celebrations, we didn't go. I'm not sure. Didn't it take 6 years to prove a claim?
I think so.
And you had to live on. We didn't live there only in the summers. Now, my father was in real estate and he had an office in town. We lived 6 miles from Tyrone. And finally, we went to school at Tyrone. We went with him in the mornings, and came back with him in the evening.
And he had a real estate office in Tyrone?
Yes.
What's the name of the office?
Well, R.T. Ray, Real Estate and Insurance, I believe is what it was. And he advertised in the Kansas papers, and I have some of the old advertising that he did. Ray and Company, R.T. Ray and Company. But he had insurance.
Yeah.
I know he had insurance when I was just a little old kid, and the way they used to determine what the loss when there was hail was they threw their hats, and then they counted under that they counted the stems that were broken and all to determine the loss. And Mr. Long from Guyman used to come with Dad. They used to work together. And Mr. Long says, I can remember when you used to tag along with us. And he's dead now, but
Now, was this like wheat or?
Wheat, when there was a hail loss.
So they just threw a hat out there and counted the stems under
They threw a hat. And of course, they wore a hat with sort of brim like they do now. Just sailed this hat out there, and then they went and counted the broken stems that wouldn't produce, you see.
And under the hat.
Yeah, it was under the hat. And how they determined that by acreage, I don't know, but that's the way they did it. And Mr. Long talked to me afterward, after I was married, and told me I tagged along with them. But that was interesting. Now, how they determined that, I don't know. You might ask someone sometime.
I will. When did you move into Tyrone?
That I can't hardly tell, because I don't really know. Because you see, I was going to school there in Tyrone before we ever moved. We just stayed on that place. We just spent the time on the land that we had to spend. And then we moved to Tyrone. I don't know how much. I should have asked a lot of questions before my mother died, because she.
Do you remember the turn of the century? No, that's 1900. I'm sorry, that was just the next year. What are your earliest memories of Tyrone?
Well, Tyrone was my father was pretty active in what went on in Tyrone, and they had Chautauqua, and we had an opera house. Can you imagine? It was a big old building, cold as a frog when we went there for play practice and things like that. And that old opera house was there for a long time, and they had Chautauquas, and they had plays, and they had things come there. In Tyrone.
Who are some of the famous people that came there?
No, I don't. But they were. It was just all right.
What was it made of?
Huh?
Was it made of stone?
No, that old opera house was framed the way I remember it.
Do you have any photographs of it?
I'm not sure, and I don't believe I have any, unless I have a photograph of the whole street.
Yeah.
It was on the south side of the street, the way I remember it. And we went there to practice a lot.
Can you tell me, just walking down the street, can you remember what businesses were on the street?
In the early,
Mhm.
real early?
Yeah.
Well, let's see. What was the man's name? Dad Love had the big store there. Implements and everything. It was a big place.
What was the name of it?
Louisa Love. I've forgotten what it was called. That's the Love House. In the early days, of course, they planted trees and shrubs and rose bushes and everything. I just commenced to get things all gathered up. But they had the most beautiful rose bushes and trees, but that was before they.
And this is 1909.
Yeah, they came in 1903, I think. They were, they lived out south of Tyrone. They had a dugout. Dad Love always bragged about that dugout. But anyway, he had a big store, and people came with mule teams and all, and hauled supplies from there. It was.
Your father built a house in the farm, you said.
Yeah.
What kind of house was it?
Well, it wasn't a real fancy house. It was roomy and all. And then what I remember most about it, at the back, it was built kind of on a rise. And at the back, see, the house was up here, and at the back under here, and then this was all glass. And it was so nice in the winter.
Was it a frame house?
Yeah. It was a frame house.
1 story or 2 story?
1 story, but you see, 1 story was up here, and this down here was under, but the whole side of it was glass.
Which way did it face?
South.
South.
That faced south. The other part faced north. And it's been torn down a long time. And I can remember one thing I can remember about being out there. The ants, these red ants, would bring up beads and things. And of course, we never did dig for Indian things then, you know. But they'd bring up. We had quite a thing full of beads and all, but you had to watch them till after the ants went to bed before you took anything. There's one sting from ants kids remember then.
I used to play with those.
Didn't it bother you?
Oh, yeah.
To get stung? Boy, I tell you, I would. But they would bring up all different color beads and things. Now, if we had dug there, we probably found artifacts and everything, which I've become really interested in now that.
Has anyone dug around there?
I don't know.
That's on the farm? Yeah.
But if now it'd be a different thing, you know, with me. Because we have quite a collection of Indian artifacts and things.
Did you do any work for the war effort during World War I?
Yes. I can't remember what all I did. Made some things for the soldiers. This is my baptismal certificate I ran across.
Yeah.
And then I learned to knit, and I have some of those funny things they wore over their heads, you know. They were hand knitted. A lot of those things, and they were sent to
the soldiers. Did many boys from Tyrone go to the war?
Yes, lots of them.
How many came back? Did all of them come back?
No, they didn't all come back, but I can't remember who all didn't.
What about the flu epidemic?
Oh, that was terrible. That took people like nobody's business. Yes, women died and everybody, just a lot of people died.
Did you have it?
No, I can't remember that I had it.
Remember what kind of medicines they used for the flu?
I tell you one thing I can remember, and I never did. I'd rather have the flu than that. And these poultices they made out of onions and stuff. I know we had a woman come to our house. She's supposed to be helping and nurse and all. And I don't think we had flu, but colds. And that's what she did. And I couldn't take that. I'd just rather have
What'd you make the poultice out of?
onions and I don't know what else. But it was awful. And I know some of the girls at school, some of the folks at school wore acidity things around their necks. Now that's something we never did wear. But I can remember some of the others wearing them.
What's in an acidity bag?
Well, it's kind of a brown stuff, I think. And these little bags were just about that size. They wore them on a cord around their neck, under the clothes, and the heat from their bodies. Oh, if you ever smelled acidity. Do you know what it smelled like?
No, I've never smelled one.
Oh.
My mother used to wear them, but I've never.
Well, we never did wear them, but I tell you.
Of course, Mama said that they worked because they smell so bad, no one would get close to you.
That's right. I wouldn't get near them. That's right. I think that's the reason they were immune. They were immune to a lot of diseases because nobody would get near them.
What'd you do on Armistice Day when the war ended?
I can't remember if there was a celebration at Tyrone or not. World War I.
That was November 1918.
I got married real early. And my husband was gone. He never did get across, but he was in the South.
Was he in the Army?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So February 3rd, 1918 is your wedding day.
Yeah.
Where'd you meet your husband?
Oh, he grew up there in Tyrone. Ornery kid. For a long time, I'd just go blocks to stay away from him.
How come?
He was just ornery.
What did he do?
Tease you and everything, you know. He was just a big tease. Anything tease you. But even when I was a kid, I'd stay away from him because he was such a tease. Pull your hair or anything. He was just a tease.
What else did he do to tease you?
Well, I can't think of all the things he did do. I wasn't the only one he teased. He just did it for us. He got over that after he got older.
When did you decide you liked him?
Well, there was a group of boys, Paul Cherry and Alvin McCarg and Jess Rife and three others, I think. There were 6 of them, I believe. And they would throw big parties. Oh, really nice ones. Nicer than the kids have nowadays. And I always got invited by one of those fellows. And finally, he asked me more. Or he let them know that he was going to ask me. I think that's when and he commenced to behaving himself. Teasing me.
What was his name?
Robert Earl Love.
What kind of work did he do?
He worked in the bank.
He was a banker. What was the name of the bank in Tyrone?
First National. There
Yeah.
got to be another bank there, but it went under.
What was life like in the 20s in Tyrone?
Well, I don't know. We had nice parties always. We
Were
always
there-
went to picture show, and these boys would always send and get the latest songs and all from Kansas City. Just as soon as a song was out, they had it, and we would all meet, and some of the girls would play, and we'd all sing these songs. We all learned them just right now. See, we didn't have TV and radio even, and that's where we learned all these songs and everything.
Were there many flappers in Tyrone?
Oh yeah, we were all flappers.
What is a flapper?
Just a teenager that's a smarty and dress. We dress nicely, and
What kind of dresses you wear?
I'm afraid they're kind of short.
How short?
Well, maybe minis, almost minis.
Do you bob your hair?
Yeah.
Where does the word flapper come from?
I don't know. I think it's just a name for us little teenagers, smarty teenager. You know. And but we had nice parties. We had. Most of us went to church.
Who was your minister's name? What was your minister's name?
The one that baptized me was Sullivan. M.F. Sullivan,
What church was he in?
Methodist. And I've been a Methodist ever since.
When did he come out here?
When was I baptized? This is 1911. Well, I expect Sullivan, I don't think he was there only about maybe 4 years at Tyrone. 'Cause he maybe came in 1910.
Okay.
Because we always had preachers at our house and company and everything. And his wife was named, her maiden name was Day. And I remember that somebody in the community gave her money for her own self to spend. She had a brother at Liberal, I think. She went to Liberal and she bought her a hat. It was a nice hat and it looked nice on her and everything, but some people gave her the dickens about that hat. And I know she came and talked to Mother about it. I always kept still and had big ears, and so I heard all these things, you know. She was feeling real bad about that hat. Mother told her just to let them talk. But it was becoming, it really was.
Whenever you went out on the town, I guess before you were married, how did you dress? 19, 15, 16, 17?
Well, I dressed as well as anybody, because
What'd your dresses look like?
well, they were in style, because I ordered my clothes from Kansas City.
What was the hemline?
Oh, they weren't real long.
Have a high collar?
Some of them, not all of them. But my clothes were what they were wearing other places, because my father always allowed me to get my clothes from Kansas City. That's where he lived.
Now, is this when your grandfather called you down to see how you dressed?
Well, he always liked to see how. I never did, though. It didn't take only once or twice till I commenced checking the thing myself. See now if I had things that belonged with the other things. And my jewelry, when I wore a gingham dress, I wore the jewelry that went with it if I wore jewelry. I didn't wear it not like a ring like this, and I'd wear something like that with my gingham clothes. Where I'd wear the nicer thing, my lavaliers or something with my nicer dresses. But my clothes were same as they were wearing other places because we took the Kansas City Star. My father's sister was married to the owner, I think. And I used to go with my father to Kansas City. He had property in all in Kansas City, and he'd take me with him a lot of times, and I'd visit with these relatives in Kansas City. And so I got to go to the city with him.
Is that where you bought a lot of your clothes in Kansas City?
Mm-hmm.
The stock market crash of 1929.
Well, that didn't hurt us because I don't think my father had any, I don't think it did.
How did the Depression affect you and your family?
I can't remember. Now, what date was that?
That was, well, it started, what, 30 or 31, 32?
Well, it was pretty, I was married and we had
Was your husband still in the bank at that time?
we were down here at that time. We had the bank down here.
Okay, when did you move down here?
Well, 1918. We moved down here soon after we were married.
Okay,
He got out of the service. He got out of the service and came, and he could have gone into a bank there. There was a Farmer State Bank there in Tyrone. Or he could have gone into either one of those banks there at Tyrone, but you know how kids are. We thought we wanted to get away from the relatives a little bit. He was an only child and boy. His father was an invalid, and so we just thought we'd like to get away. So this was open down here, and we came down here. And
so you've been in Goodwell since 1918?
yeah. Well, I was there before. I was down here in school before that.
When did you go to school at Goodwell?
Either 16 or 17 or 17 or 18, 17 and 18. See, I was married in 18. I guess it was 16, 17.
What'd you take?
Hmm?
What kind of classes did you take here?
Well, I just took the beginning, you know. It was PAI at that time. I took English and everything. Had to take everything. I had to make my own graduation dress.
Who was head of the school at that time?
Let's see. Black was the first. Oh, it's right on my tongue, but I can't. Maybe it'll come to me.
Who was your favorite?
Daddy Brian was here. Brian was here. He was the head of the school, though. Coffee. No? Not coffee. I can't remember. I just can't.
Who was Mr. Bryan?
He was one of the teachers. We all loved him a lot.
What'd he teach?
I think he taught English and history, I think.
Mm-hmm. What was he like?
Well, he was a scholarly looking gentleman, and he was a gentleman. He was a real fine person. And, well, isn't it funny? I can't remember that president's name. He stopped me one day in the hall, scared me to death. I thought maybe I'd done something wrong. And he just put his hand on my chin and looked at me, and he said, "Well, for goodness sake, I always thought your eyes were brown."
Oh. How many students went to school here at that time?
I don't know. I'd say 300 or 400 would about get it.
Mm-hmm. What was the main curriculum at that time?
Well, I took history and English and math, and everything. And physical ed, which I hated. Played basketball, though. I liked that.
You have a pretty good team?
We didn't have any place to play inside, though. Can you imagine playing outside?
How big was Goodwell at that time when you came here?
It wasn't very big. When we came down here right away, there was a big snow. Oh, they didn't have any sidewalks or anything, but they shoveled it off in front of the stores. And that snow was up above our heads, just practically like a tunnel. And I almost never lived it down. We were in this little bank, and I said, I never saw so many bachelors in my life as lives around here. And they said, well, who are they? And I commenced naming them. Well, the only reason I knew the men was because the women, they came in on sleds and all this big snow, and I met the men, and I the women. Here's some of these men had great big families, and they didn't act like, they acted like bachelors.
How come they put the school here at Goodwell?
Well, you don't have the history of the school or anything. Well, I think they just wanted it here too because it was an outpost that we didn't have any educational facilities close, and where our people could go to, Otherwise, a lot of them wouldn't have gone to school.
Yeah. Is there a college in Guyman around?
No. This is the only. Now at Liberal, they do have a school, but they don't have anything in Guyman except high school. They do have good schools in Guyman.
Mm-hmm. So when did you and your husband moved down to Goodwell in 18?
Yeah.
And which bank did he work in?
Only bank there was. And it shouldn't have been. The town wouldn't support a bank now even. I don't think so.
Is there a bank here now?
Mm-mm.
There's not.
We closed our bank during the Depression, during the bank holiday or bank deal. But they let us close ours out ourselves.
Okay, that was in the 30s when all the banks closed. Now, what do you mean they let you close your bank out?
Well, some of them,
yourself?
they just took over, and the banking department or whoever it was closed them out, but they let us stay in the bank and close it. So we closed out, and it should, well, it wouldn't hurt if they had a little, what do you call it? Little bank that's
Yeah, an annex or something.
yeah from another bank, but to have a bank, I don't believe it's supported now. Students get loans, from the college and stuff like that.
What did your husband do after the bank closed?
He went down to, he stayed open for a while and took care of the city treasurer, and then he did real estate and insurance and stuff like that. And then finally, he wanted to do something for the war effort, and they wouldn't have, he didn't have any place for him. He sure did want to get into the war deal, but they didn't have any place. There wasn't anything for him, and so he went down to Cactus, where that is, between here and Amarillo.
Okay. Is it in Texas?
Yes.
Okay.
And it was a war installation, you might say. Anyway, it was a big thing. He went down there and he got in with a company And then finally I went down, and I was with Brown and Root in the time payroll office. And then when Brown and Root finished up their work there, Brown Root's a big company, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I could have gone on with them. They offered me a nice place and to get a place. I said, well, I have a family. I have a daughter in school. And they said, well, they would see that I had an air-conditioned office in Houston, you know, their headquarters there in Houston, and they'd see that I got a good place to live and my daughter good school and everything. And I said, well, what about my husband? They said, well, we'll see if he gets a job too. And boy, when I told him this, he hit the ceiling. Oh, he couldn't stand it. You know, you have to be careful about a man's ego. And so we had property up here, you know, land and all, so we just came back home. And we got a lot of flack because we wouldn't rent this house while we were down in Cactus, because they needed housing, I guess. But anyway, I didn't want anybody in it, and he didn't either. So we came back up here, and then he went to work for B.C. Knoll, and got his. Well, he was quite a character. Now, if you know B.C. Knoll, he had a big tire company, and he was a character. Now, I'll tell you for sure. And then when they wanted her at the bank, and he went in the bank. That's where he.
Where at? In
Diamond.
Diamond.
City National. That's what he liked to do anyway. But he was all right at B.C. Knowles. He got Knowles' stuff all in order and did his income tax. And he did income tax. When it was income tax time, he had used this room back here for his office and had people all the time. More than he could do, he had to turn people away.
Was there much work for the war effort in Goodwell during World War II?
Well, not that I can remember. I just don't think
Like
they.
if the students organized any activities? Or?
I can't remember. See, I was gone. I was down at Cactus part of the time, and I don't think there was much done though. I really don't think there was.
What was your first reaction when you heard the Japanese bomb Pearl Harbor?
Well, I'm Republican. Tell you, that tells you a lot. And I never liked Roosevelt. And I heard him on the radio say that he knew Pearl Harbor was going to be attacked. I heard him say that. And I thought, you're the cause of all those people getting murdered. And I was pretty bitter about that. Because I didn't have anybody down there, but my neighbor had lived right across here. Her son was down there. He just didn't get killed, but he. But I heard Roosevelt say he knew it was going to be attacked. That was a rotten bunch. I don't know what you think, but you know, I've lived through all this stuff, and I know. I listen to things, and not just one side. I listen to all sides of them.
What about the atomic bomb?
That's what?
What do you think about the atomic bomb when we dropped on Hiroshima?
Well, I don't know what would have happened. I didn't really. That was a terrible thing to do. But when you stop to think that those people were such fanatics and just kill like they did down at Pearl Harbor, well, something had to be done, I guess. So I guess President
Truman?
I guess something had to be done. He felt like something had to be done. And maybe it did. Mm-hmm. So I didn't blame him too much. It's a horrible thing. But just think what they did. And, well, if they'd gained power, I don't suppose we'd be United States today, do you? It's like Russia, if they gained the power.
Was there a big celebration here when the war ended, World War II?
No, but I was shocked when my neighbors celebrated when Roosevelt died. I didn't even know that. Oh, they just really celebrated.
Was they Republicans too?
No, no. And I know other people that really were glad too.
What was the reaction to a lot of the farmers around here when he started killing the cattle and plowing the cotton under?
Well, I know firsthand what he did. Now, McElwain's, for instance, lived out here north of town. And I tried to get her to relate some of this because she knew, and she was real good at telling about things that happened. They killed some of their livestock and all, and there were people near here, perfectly healthy livestock, and they weren't skin and bones either, those animals. And they wouldn't let anybody have those to eat. And there were people that could have used it. They just took them down there and killed them. They killed the cattle, calves and cattle, and I think swine too.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I tried to get her to, if I'd had my thing at that time, I'd have had her to tell it because she told it to me. Well, I know they were friends of ours. And that was one case I knew just firsthand. We went out and saw where they were. So, but that was a terrible thing to do and not let anybody have them. They said they were starving, and all that.
Did your husband do any work for WPA?
My husband?
Yeah.
No. He never did work. We never did have to do that.
Can you describe what a dust storm was like?
Well, I've stood out here and watched them, and they look just like a dark wall. And then as it comes towards you, it depends on how the sun is, I guess, but it's so many times it's just awesome. It's mauve color, and then it's pinks in there and all, and it just boils up and up and up. And I've stayed out till it just almost hit because I wanted to see what it looks like. It's a really awesome sight to see one of those, and then it just gets dark as night. And my house is tight, but I covered up everything that I could.
Where you couldn't keep it out?
No, you couldn't keep it out. And then on the windowsills, when this dust would get on the windowsills, it didn't get real deep on mine, but they'd be all covering. You could take a magnet and run it across there, and this stand up. That dust would just stand up. It was full, I guess, of I had plowshare iron or something in it. But I know the kid did play with the. I had a vacuum cleaner. It went through all of that, and the company wanted it so bad because it had worked through all of that, those 30s. And they took it and let me have it back. I sent to have it checked over and everything because I had a guarantee, and my husband said it's not worth two hoops. And I said, well, I'm going to try it anyway. So I sent it. And they then came to me right away, and they wanted that machine back. They wanted it for a relic.
Yeah, campaign.
Yeah, so
advertisement.
Yes, their advertising campaign. Mm-hmm. But it was as good as new when they sent it back to me.
What kind was it?
Kirby.
Kirby.
Mm-hmm. I used it all the time. No, I've had several since then. No, I let them have it.
How long would a dust storm last?
Several hours.
Was it difficult breathing?
Well, I guess it was in some places. If you were out in it, yes. Just about suffocate you. But I know one time I was up at Mother's. We were up at Mother's, and Mrs. Love, Earl's mother, wanted to go out the cemetery, and we'd taken her out the cemetery and just got back. And oh, it was a bad one came, and my mother had gone out with my brother to see one of these rabbit drives, and that's a terrible thing too. And she was out in that, and she had two preachers there at the house. Now they were scared. I didn't think a preacher ought to be scared. I thought they ought to have more faith in that. But anyway, we turned on the lights, but it was just like a black velvet curtain on the windows. But this is blacker than night. And finally, my brother and my mother got home. They'd found some kind of shelter, and then they came home. And Mother said, I told the Lord if He just let me get home, I'd never do a thing like this again. And she didn't.
What's a rabbit drive?
Well, they said the rabbits were eating up all the vegetation, you know. Mm-hmm. Well, they'd get on horses or cars and all way out and then drive them up into a fenced place, mesh. Oh, it'd be a pretty big place. And those poor rabbits couldn't get out. And now I know Tom Rayburn, that used to be down the store here, told me he was at the same drive my mother was. And he said it was as black as it could be. And he said, I laid down on the ground with my face down. And he said the horses were just screaming and trying to get away, you know. And he said, I just prayed that none of us step on me. So, no, he was at the same one Mother was. And she said it was a horrible thing. And they let kids kill those rabbits with clubs. And I guess the men did too, because they couldn't use a gun. If they'd used a gun, they'd shot somebody, sure. And the rabbits squeal and scream too, you know. I never did go to one, but I just can't stand people being abusive to animals.
What about floods in this area?
Floods?
Yeah.
Did somebody tell you we had a flood?
No. Was any big floods while you lived here?
I can't remember any. It's rained awfully hard and everything. And I've stood up there, and I've been in that dormitory up there and watched a wall of water come down. There's arroyos and all up north of that. But the engineers, they've engineered things now till the water's controlled. Mm-hmm. And so it don't, we have a basement and never did get water in it. I think some people have though, but it wasn't really a flood.
How many kids do you have?
Two.
Grandkids?
My husband was an only child, and we have two children. And they had 5 between them. Now I have 10 grandchildren. No. I have 10 great-grandchildren. I have 5 grandchildren and 10 great-grandchildren. So I'm doing pretty well.
Yeah. Anything you want to tell me?
What about?
About you. Anything
About
you've
me?
done? Yeah. Anything about Goodwell, Tyrone? About your childhood?
Tyrone's got to be a bedroom place now, hasn't it?
I don't
You
know.
been up there?
No.
Well, I think there's a lot of people live there and go to work at Liberal and other places. Now, our old home's up there.
It is.
Mm-hmm. But it's been, my brother sold it, and it's been, changed. Mm-hmm. It's a 2-story house. It's up by the school.
Let me see.
I ought to think of something that's real thrilling. The one thing I remember when I was a child was the lumberyard burning. Oh, that was really sad.
Who owned it? Who owned the lumberyard?
I can see that man and that woman too, but I just can't. Oh, I can't call him.
March 16th, 1983. This is Joe Todd, an interview with Emma Louise Ray Love.
Oklahoma Territory,
Okay.
January 26th, 1899.
At Bliss, Oklahoma Territory.
Bliss.
What's that near?
I don't know.
Of course, it's in Kay County, in the Ponca Reservation.
It's not too far from Ponca City, I don't think.
Yeah. Who is your father?
Robert Townsend Ray.
And was he from Oklahoma Territory? Was he born in Oklahoma?
No, he was born in Pennsylvania.
And who is your mother?
Ida Francis Ray. Ida Francis Regner.
How do you spell that?
Regnier.